We're at Rosebank Distillery today to talk about the Whisky Distilleries of the United Kingdom by Alfred Barnard.
You know, if you're interested in whisky history, if you're interested in amassing a collection of vital elements within whisky, whether that's liquid or whether that is text, you know, this is so important. So this remarkable tome, it's a bit of a mystery, you know, who was the man, you know?
He is a drinks journalist, I suppose, but before that he's had different careers as well. A soap salesman, living in South London or around those areas, and going on this amazing adventure. You feel this adventure.
And basically he just went around all the distilleries, you know, what's about 140 distilleries in Scotland, obviously, but also England, also Ireland, examining them in pretty forensic detail. So you can look at this book in so many different ways, you know, as a historical document, as a production document, and also as a guide, as a travel companion, as you're kind of virtually touring the whisky world at that time.
And it's the voice of one person as well.
Good point.
He went to all of them. So although his tone changes, you're getting the impression of one person going around the wilds of Scotland and Ireland and England and recording what he sees, what he feels.
It had never been done before, you know. I mean, you see a couple, you know, there's Tovey, there's Morewood, you know, which are more kind of historical guides, an idea of, you know, how whisky was made, etc. But nothing like this. It just suddenly emerges at a very important point in whisky's history as well.
A crucial time, just before another period of major change, just after a longer period of significant growth, and really the establishment of the whisky industry, growth, Alfred visits, and then there's a rocky time to come.
Yeah. But it's also important to put this within context of like when it was written and what the whisky industry was going through at that particular time, because 1880s were just moving towards another great kind of pulse of distillery building. You know, so you had, you know, a whole number of distilleries built 1816, and that kind of rush in 1823 into 1830s. A lot closed down. There's another kind of pulse as railways come in the 1860s. And now, and then, tail end of the 19th century, boom, you know, another load are suddenly emerging. So it's an important account of the whisky industry, which seems to be in very, very rude health.
Yeah, I mean, you could pick any time in history pretty much to say it would be great if someone would go around and record all those distilleries. But this is pretty much perfect, I would say, because you still have this reaching back to the very beginning of the establishment of the industry through a few generations. But you've had a period of renewal. Lots of the distilleries, they've been updated and new bits of kit put in and efficiency starting to come in.
Electric light,
for example. And some distilleries are starting to be able to build significant volume and have been through periods of renewal. But at the same time, you've got some distilleries that appear virtually unchanged since the start. So there's lots of contrasts within there, which is fascinating. And the reader immediately starts to think about who survived, who didn't survive, why one distillery did and not the other.
Yeah.
And then there's the regionality of course about it as well. You know, Campbelltown obviously jumps out because there are still a lot of distilleries there. The vast majority don't survive, just two within this book. Scotia, as it is called, which we now know as Glen Scotia, and Springbank. So you read those and you're thinking, well, why you? And you kind of read with a sadness about the lost distilleries, but then also an excitement. You're like, go on, Springbank.
Go on. You're going to be okay.
Yeah. And so that's fascinating, absolutely fascinating to see that. Springbank was one of the more efficient, in fact, apart from Hazelburn, it was the most efficient of the Campbelltown distilleries.
So
which is not how we talk about Springbank now.
No. And also, you place it in context of all the all the closures from 1900, and a huge number closed down in the 1920s. And who was closing down? A lot of them were very small distilleries. You kind of go back and you look and say, well, actually, I'm not surprised they closed down, because they were making whiskey in a very old-fashioned way, and it was a really small distillery. The industry was in crisis. We're going to close this down. We're either going to shut it completely, or we're going to close it down. I think just isolating Campbelltown is missing the point to some extent, because the rest of Scotland was Perthshire was decimated
for the second time. That was their second crash. Campbelltown is the crash we think of because it's kind of the most recent. But the Aberdeen whisky industry is in rude health here. 3 distilleries, I think, maybe 4. They're all gone at the same time as Campbelltown.
Borders have gone as well. So that late 1920s, especially, but that was kind of scorched earth. But also interesting, in a contemporary context about, we're looking at Scotch whisky probably having to adjust supply at the moment, so the cyclical nature of Scotch, but also some of the distilleries which closed down are now reopening. You think of Portellin, which closed in 1930, then didn't reopen until the 1960s. You think of Brora, or the original Clynelish, which is in here as well. And you think of where we are today, Rosebank, classic example of popularly called ghost distilleries who are now kind of reviving themselves.
There's extraordinary resilience within the whisky industry that businesses manage to survive over long periods of time and crossing economic growth and economic depression. And part of the reason is these beautiful casks of whisky sitting in the warehouse that keep that name alive in people's minds. And
the story of whisky in the 20th century, Scotch whisky in the 20th century, is blends. But the story and the interest in Scotch whisky today, even if not necessarily in terms of volume, is single malt. So I think it's interesting for me to think about Barnard within that historical context of writing about whisky, because this was the first. Then there was a series of articles, again in trade journals, which was reprinted recently. But it really wasn't until Michael Jackson appears that you begin to see writing about whisky and whisky distilleries once again. So
it's a big gap, isn't it?
It's a huge gap. And nobody was talking about Barnard. Barnard was irrelevant in that particular context because the story was blends. And Barnard really only started becoming relevant again when people became interested in single malt whisky. And with that, you discover all these kind of forgotten distilleries and lost distilleries and ghost distilleries. You go, oh yeah, I wonder what it was like. And suddenly Barnard, the focus is back on, and suddenly Barnard becomes relevant again. So because this was a forgotten book. Nobody knew about this book. For most of the 20th century, nobody knew about this book because it wasn't relevant to the way in which whisky was talked about.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So the rise of single malt culture discovered Barnard again.
Yeah.
And then Barnard contributed so much back to the single malt culture.
Yeah.
And contributed to places like this being able to reopen in some sense.
Because you look at Michael's book, and Michael would have been the first person to accept this and admit this. This was a template for what Michael did. And it was a template for what the Schweppes book, what Philip Morris, that book as well. Because all of a sudden, the whiskey ship is turning, and the way in which it's talked about, and the way that a new community is becoming interested in whiskey. So why is this still relevant then, Arthur?
My personal reflection on having been back through Barnard more in the last couple of weeks than I have done for a long time is it's actually more relevant than ever, and I probably should have been dipping into it a lot more than I have, because the way we viewed whiskey has changed again. I've been working 25 years, whatever it is, in the whiskey industry, and of course, you went straight to Barnard when you start learning about whiskey. And for me, it was absolutely time to go back. And I took so much more out of it because the way we look at production now is different again. I was one of those people who was like, how many stills do they have? How big's their mash tun? And now when I go back to it, it is the little peek into that time in Scotland, in extremely remote communities, and the wonderful interactions with the people middle class and below who operated those places and built that industry. And it's pretty unique for that. We have got all these small distilleries, but that doesn't mean they're traditional. They're nothing like the small distilleries in these. And what the new distilleries are doing is incredibly innovative and incredibly interesting. And it's sometimes couched in looking at the past, but that's just scale. You know, these small distilleries are incredibly efficient compared to these things.
Sure.
And there's so much to learn about how they made whiskey in the past. You have to really pick it apart and take these little tidbits and kind of add them up into some kind of a picture. It's clues. It's a kind of it's a mystery that you have to piece these little bits together. But it's great fun. It's a great document of a different Scotland. It's a great document of a different whiskey industry. And I think it's a really compelling portrait of a man, although you have to just interpret his voice. Who was doing something amazing. He was adventuring.
Yes, he was going where no man had gone before. This kind of mad, kind of quixotic tour around Britain, you know, finding out all of these facts. I think, I would agree. I think it's more relevant than ever these days, especially with new distillers. Sort of saying, actually, the industry has gone so far down the efficiency and yield route that we need to pick up some of the old ways of making whiskey, and how did they make it? You know, so you've got to go back to these texts to actually say what it was like, and you can look at this book in so many ways. So yeah, it's hugely relevant, hugely relevant.
If you've got that bottle in front of you, whether you're a drinker, whether you're a collector, whatever it might be, if it was a bottle of Rosebank, drinking that liquid
while reading Alfred
takes you back to the 1880s, and his descriptions takes you right back to the 1790s. You know, that is time travel at its very best. It's it's an extremely important book, and you know, first edition is just a joy to sit with.
I just want to touch it.